All right, friends, you're in for a treat today. Yes, that's right. We have the author of a fantastic new book, Tragic Hero, here live with us. You'll recognize him as the coach to many of the top agents in the country in real estate. Wally Bressler will take us from the top to the bottom and back up to the top again. Coming up next on Cliff's Notes. Real estate agents, are you struggling with the day-to-day grind, dialing for dollars, putting in hours of floor time with little to show for it? Are you looking for tips, tricks, and tactics to accelerate your career as an agent that will have you closing more homes, working with more clients, and earning more money than ever before? Hi, my name's Cliff Freeman, and I've spent the past 2 decades of my real estate career running one of the top brokerages in DFW and personally coaching over 1,000 high-performing real estate professionals across North America. I created this podcast to share the strategies and tactics you need to explode your real estate business. I guarantee it. Well, I heard somebody post the band is back together. And there's not a whole lot of people that would remember what that's all about. But years ago, this gentleman on my far left here took me under his wing when I was getting broken in the coaching business for real estate. And as I said, put me under his wing, taught me you kept a few secrets, but taught me almost everything he knew that helped launch my career in real estate coaching. C2, I'm super excited to have Wally Bressler on the show with us today.
Yeah, likewise. He's always been a great guy to have around and look up to, and I'm excited to dive into his book today and then kind of present that to our audience and unpack it. So.
Yeah, we got a lot to unpack today, that's for sure. And man, what a name for a book, Tragic Hero. I'm surprised. That's such a great title for a book.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised somebody else didn't find it, Wally, and use it.
Well, I mean, it comes from classic literature, right? Because Tragic Hero has like an early arc, right? And usually due to their being boastful and being arrogant and whatnot, they usually create their own downfall, and they have a horrible downfall, and they fall all the way down to the bottom, and then they realize the error of their ways, and then they kind of work their way back up. And so, I mean, not hero in the standpoint like I'm, leaping tall buildings in a single bound hero, but like, overcoming the challenges that part of it was created for me, a lot of it I created myself, and getting to the point where I was able to master what I needed to master to put my life back together.
Right. It's funny because those of you who don't know Wally's history, you actually majored in lit in college, right?
English, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So was Shakespeare on your reading list? Or?
Yeah, I took a few different classes for Shakespeare. Read all of his sonnets.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what in the world motivated you to pen this story?
One of the challenges for people who grow up like I did is that you live life with a lot of shame, right? A lot of embarrassment, a lot of shame, and just hiding from people. And, part of it was just like I would be talking to my therapist, and we'd be talking, and I'm like, I hope nobody finds out about that. And one day I was just sitting on my couch, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I just got on Facebook and social media and just told my, my story, what I'm saying? And I got a lot of feedback. And then as my life started to improve, I decided, I'm like, there's got to be other people who have gone through this. And, it took me the better part of 45 years to figure it out. And I just didn't want people to have to go through that themselves. And so kind of committed my life for the last couple of years, through my book and the other coaching that I do to get people to the point where they don't have to go another year of their life without, really living a life full of joy and happiness and whatnot,
Well, that just speaks to your heart, which you've always had a heart for others and for helping and teaching and educating. And this book's gotten out of the gate pretty quick so far, hasn't it? Did you get a couple of distinguished awards or acknowledgments?
Yeah, so it was actually a bestseller in 4 different categories on Amazon in the first week, which is great. Extremely blessed. And then I'm getting a Quilly Award from the National Association of Authors next week for being a best-selling author. So it's actually it's worked out well.
That's outstanding. That is fantastic. Yeah. So you are and you actually have already had, the book's only been out for what, a week or two?
September
Officially?
September 1st. So basically 23 days.
23 days now, and you've already had people write you and say it's had a huge impact on their lives, and they said that, in fact, I think you had one that said that it felt like you wrote it for them.
Yeah,
right?
I hear from a lot of people, like, I feel like I was reading a book about myself, which, confirmed for me that, writing it was the right thing to do, and that, because, I don't know if you read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
He talks about the people who lived and the people who didn't live. For those who weren't actually, killed by the Germans, the big the distinguishing factor whether or not they made it is that they had hope. If they believed that there was something for them afterwards, And
Right.
so I think hope plays into it. You look at a guy like me who you would never think would have gone through the stuff that I did, who did, and then, made it to the other side. And even though I'm 54 now, in the last 3 years, I was able to, I don't want to say reverse, but basically rectify a lot of bad choices, a lot of horrible things, and start using them to help other people,
Yeah, sort of re-engineer yourself and your brain, right? I mean, a lot of it is, it's the mental state. Viktor Frankl, that was, by the way, one of the greatest books ever written. Just unbelievable. Gosh, my thoughts go back to that because we've used that a lot in coaching and so forth. And hope, Zig Ziglar said a long time ago that you can go about a week without food. You can go roughly 3 days without water, but you literally can't go a day without hope.
Right.
And hopefully, right?
No pun intended.
For some people who are watching or will be reading your book, this will be that hope that they need to make it across to the other side.
That would really be great.
Yeah, yeah, that would be outstanding. So let's just go ahead and dive in a little bit. You start talking about taking radical responsibility for things, regardless of what's happened to you in life. Talk to us a little bit about what's involved in taking radical responsibility.
I saw, and actually I quoted in the book, but I saw Will Smith talk about fault versus responsibility. And it's only 3 minutes, but he basically says it's not your fault you had an alcoholic father. It's not your fault that, your mother or father did something to you. It's not your fault that maybe you experienced a trauma. But it is your responsibility to deal with it, right? So how most of us got here, probably not our fault, because it's hard when you're, 0 to age 12, born to age 12. It's hard to figure anything out because you don't have the faculties, the emotional faculties, mental faculties. So what happens is you've got to sit down and take a look at it and say, if it's going to change, I've got to make the change. Right? There's no money fairy or relationship fairy or problem-solving fairy that's going to drop a box off on your front step one day and say, hey, everything's all taken care of. You have to step up and take responsibility for your life. What goes into your brain, what comes out of your brain. I joke around a little bit, but I'm like, when we're kids, our brains are like savings accounts that can only receive deposits. Like when you're a kid, deposit. Nobody teaches you how to take anything out. So by the time you're an adult, it's hard for you to keep, disempowering thoughts to keep coming into your brain and create, all kinds of emotional havoc where, you can't get any sort of consistent business or anything going in your life, and so part of that is taking responsibility for what goes into your mind and getting out of your mind what really shouldn't be there.
So you talk about the language of empowerment in the book, and a lot of us are caught in that habit of using disempowering language, like I can't and I won't and I'll never, that type of thing. What's the difference? What would be considered empowering language or empowering thoughts?
Yeah, we always talk about affirmations needing to be in the positive I am, right? So I am anything, if you just said that regularly. And some people don't know what to do for affirmations. I mean, every morning I put on a YouTube video, it's about 10 minutes long, and it's just a bunch of like self-love affirmations that you say after the person says them. It's interesting because people don't realize that when you're using affirmations, you're doing the same thing to reprogram your brain that you did to program your brain your whole life, right? You're saying stuff you've been saying your whole life. You're just saying things that disempowering, hurtful, mean, nasty. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's things we say to ourselves we would never say to anybody else. I think good policies don't say anything to yourself you wouldn't say to a child. You would never tell a child they were stupid, or that they were dumb, or that they were an idiot.
And give us an example. You hit on a few in your book. When you were growing up, what was some of the disempowering language that you encountered growing up?
You'll never learn. right? You'll never learn. Don't eat too much, you're going to get fat. So that sort of thing. Why are you such a pain in the ass? What else? Can't you do anything right?
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't. For what it's worth, I wasn't intentional. I'm saying my parents just didn't have the skill set to be those type of parents. And it's funny because when I was in prison, I read a book called "The 7 Things Parents Do to Screw Up Their Children," and really good book. The chapter 1 said the opposite.
Stephen Covey? No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Urgent but important. No, but he said in the book, he said, the opposite of dysfunction is dysfunction. And so what he said was, I talk about in the book, right, there's epigenetics where, trauma stays on the DNA as it gets passed down from generation to generation. And if your grandparents were, mean, nasty, hurtful people, your parents are going to be one of 3 things. Either going to be mean, nasty, hurtful people, or they're going to be nice people and try and rectify what happened with them, or they'll go to the other side of things and they'll be so nice and let you get away with everything that you're like, you get no guidance,
Yes.
And
right.
so, a lot of parents try to compensate for that. Like, and we can say this, I'm sorry, I love you, but, your dad and I grew up with not a whole lot. And so basically what we did was to try and give our kids everything we could give them.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have a
100%.
great work ethic. My kids do too, but I think a lot of people do that because they had nothing. They don't want their kids to go without. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's that sort of thing. And I think, we need to take a hard look at and what was said to us as children, especially from our parents, and try and hold 2 thoughts in our mind that, hey, listen, you know what? My mom and dad were not good parents. They
Right.
weren't. They were not good parents, but they did the best they could
Right.
with what they had.
So you leave that, you frame it in a positive manner.
Right, but it gives you a lot of freedom too. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not resenting anybody because you realize that so few parents have the faculties to be able to be a good parent.
Right.
And a lot of us carry so much trauma from when we're children, just from what our parents said and did. My parents both smoked. My dad stopped smoking. He drank. They were both overweight. My dad they were both perfectionists. Not bad people, but they both suffered from anxiety and didn't really take care of it. So you're in like a bubble.
Yes.
Every day when you get home of all these things. And so,
Yes. But as you get to in the book, the whatever event you went through, your reaction to that event will determine the outcome. I remember the story that, who was the gentleman? I'll think of it in a minute. But there was a story about twins that grew up
the
with
alcoholic father.
the alcoholic father, right? And they interviewed these twins long after they had grown up and stuff, and it turned out that one of them, just like their father, was an alcoholic, and the other one didn't drink at all. Mm-hmm. And when asked why they turned out the way they did, both of them answered the same.
Yeah.
They said, because my dad was an alcoholic.
Right. How'd you expect
So
that to turn out?
the choice was one decided not to drink, the other decided to drink, right?
Yep.
So no matter what happens, no matter what the external things, you've got to have an internal locus of control. You have your own dials to adjust, but
Right.
you can't adjust the things that happen to you, right? So I guess I love the way Brent Gove puts this. He says the enemy is the inner me, right? So that's what we have to work on.
Yeah, true.
You talk about self-control in the book, and can you tell us a little bit about how do you, what is this self-management that you mentioned and sort of self-control?
Great question. Historically, when you grow up in a situation where either you experience trauma, and I want to clarify something, like you don't have to have a horrible childhood like I did. You don't have to be like, your parents didn't have to be mean or hurtful, whatever. There's a client I have who, she's a perfectionist. She went to gym class in 5th grade and wore dress shoes one day. And the kids made fun of her, like, unmercilessly forever. And so she decided that as she grew up that she wasn't going to give anybody, like, anything that they could pick apart. So, hair extensions, nails, makeup, thousands of dollars of clothes, purses, nice car, so that they potentially couldn't say anything. The only problem is perfectionism is a strategy for failure because there's no such thing as perfect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's important, because I just talked with somebody the other day who's going to start my class. He's like, well, mine wasn't like yours. And I'm like, hey, you don't need to compare anything. If it was bad for you, it was bad for you. So I just want to say that because I don't want people to think that you've got to have a train wreck of a childhood to be impacted negatively by something that happened in your life. So back to your question about self-control, self-management, There's a strategy from dialectical behavioral therapy called basically becoming present or becoming mindful, right? If you look at, how we process things, if you think a lot about the future, there's anxiety associated with that, right? The unknown, lots of fear and anxiety. If we think about the past and all the terrible things that happened, we get depressed, we get sad. But if I'm focusing on the moment, what's going on and being present, neither of those are there, right? And then when we're able to do that, we'll let those feelings that we haven't been processing come up and get out of us, because they want to come up and get out of us anyway. I want you to share what you shared at lunch about the brain, because I think it's a perfect explanation, right, about how our brain processes things and how it wants understanding, how it wants peace, how it wants clarity, and so. But you literally have to be hyper vigilant as your disempowering emotions come up, and learn how to be present and let those feelings pass. The other thing is through neuroplasticity, by becoming present and mindful and working on it every day, literally doing like mindful meditations every day, eventually your brain's going to take over, right? Because you're forcing your brain in those mindful meditations to not let intrusive thoughts come in. Even if it's about you having a grocery shop later, right? But eventually it's like taking your brain to the gym, and soon enough your brain takes over and says, okay, we're not letting this in. And people report to me when I'm working with them, I'm so much more relaxed. This used to bother me, that doesn't bother me anymore, so, but we have to be hyper vigilant because our brain does not want to change.
Yeah, that's what we talked about. The brain was created millions of years ago, and it was originally designed, to keep us from getting eaten by lions and tigers and that sort of thing. And so you have this fight or flight issue that you deal with, and this, the bigger part of your brain is actually the disk. If you want to talk about like a laptop, the storage disk, it's the subconscious, and that's where all your past history lives, and you can access it. If this is your current memory, your RAM, then your RAM can reach back and pull out certain parts. And unfortunately, the more we think about the traumas, you were talking about this at lunch, the more you think about traumas, the worse they get, because it's easier for your conscious to retrieve that from the subconscious. Our good friend Derry Rodriguez has a memory resolution therapy that he does on folks to help refile.
EMDI?
It's all, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And believe me, folks, we'll talk some more perhaps about Gary, but he's a great guy, and we're doing the cruise, right? The NLP certification in self-leadership, December 11th through the 18th. Hope you can make that if you're into it. But that really is what, because your brain, it's called an amygdala hijack, and your brain just takes over, and you do irrational things to get you at what it thinks is out of trouble, right? So there's a certain point when that lion's looking at you with his teeth sticking out, it's time for you to run, and hopefully you can outrun the slowest person you're with, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole notion here. Now, so we talk about healthy self-control, because if you don't have self-control, then it can lead to things that you've had to deal with throughout your life. And I'm talking, I'm talking about? I'm talking about addictions, okay? So if you don't mind, would you just share a little bit about how you've had to deal with addictions, how you've beaten them, and just shed some light on this for people in the audience who may have their own set of issues that they need to hear?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a commercial from some recovery center, and the gentleman owned it says, when somebody comes to me and says they have an addiction, I don't ask them why the addiction, I ask them why the pain, right? Because that addiction really is just a comforting mechanism to make the pain go away. I just want to say this real quickly. T. Harv Eker is the Millionaire Mind, right? He says, he calls it TFAR, right? Thoughts, feelings, actions, results. The problem is we get triggered, there's a thought. Most people who are addicted, have addictions, skip right over the feeling and go right to action. I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to drink, smoke, have sex, watch pornography. I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to be a perfectionist. I'm going to do anything I can to not deal with that emotion. And so, and addictions literally come about as a way of trying to cope with pain that you can't process. So, when I was younger, I come from an Italian family. If you know Italians, communication strategies lie somewhere between getting smacked and getting yelled at. Okay? My mother and grandmother couldn't throw a baseball, but if they had a shoe near them, they would hit you at 50 paces and swear in the head. So, it's one of the punishments when I was 3, 4, 5 was to be put to bed without dinner. And so that created a tremendous amount of uncertainty about being hungry. To this day, I still do not like being hungry. I'm saying? And it's one of the things I'm working on, but the whole point is as my life got more and more painful, I kept going back to food and food and food and food and food, because that's really the oldest coping mechanism I have, or addiction I have. And then I was sexually abused when I was 10. When you're sexually abused, historically what they say is you either use sex as ways to get approval and affection, or you avoid it altogether. I was on that side. You know what I'm saying? So I'm 54 years old. I've never had one healthy relationship with a woman. I know I can, and I've worked on myself. I'm a healthy person. I just got to meet that person, but never healthy. All right. And then I started looking at pornography when I was 11. And then, a funny story, I think you saw it in the book. I'm sitting in the living room of my house, and I'm the third. So my dad would go, "Third, come here." I'm like, "Okay." I go in, and I saw one of his adult magazines on the table.
I did read this.
And I'm like, I am screwed. Like, he knows I've been looking at it, right?
Busted, right?
Yeah, I've been, that was like reading the newspaper for me, at that time. And then he said, "Sit down," and he goes, "I want to talk to you about, sex." I said, "Okay." So, and he just said, "Hey, listen, this is a woman's breast, this is her vagina, this is this. Make sure you be nice and ask permission." I mean, that was my sex talk. It was like 18 seconds. And all I could think about is that I wasn't like in big trouble, right? So, anyway, and then I started having sex at age 12 and 13. That whole time I was being bullied. So my self-esteem was terrible, my self-worth was terrible. And so, and then, growing up poor, I had really big issues around money as well. Kids at school had Nike Cortez, they had Levi's jeans, they had better lunches than I did. They have, everything was better. Kids would go on ski trips, and we did none of that. You know what I'm saying? And so by the time I was, 14, I was pretty screwed in the head, and I was doing everything I could to avoid dealing with any pain. And basically what I tried to do was use achievements as a way to run my shame, but you can't outrun it.
Yeah.
Right. I went to good college, played football. You know what I'm saying? I really did really well in real estate. I've had a really fortunate life, despite all the horrible things that I've done. But there's a very distinct time or switch in my change in my life where up to age 14, I was acted upon. Then 14 on, I was the egregious one.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just and when you're in the middle of the addiction, you're not thinking about it. I mean, and if you're addicted to something, some people are addicted to work. We talked about that, Real estate agents staying up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because they're afraid that a deal is going to fall apart or something. If you are addicted to something, you need to get to that place where you can, become healthy and manage your emotions and not let your emotions take over to the point where you can't function.
That's a great, I'm glad you tied that into real estate, because there are some real estate agents who've never really had to work in this business yet. And what we're about to see and it's pretty much agreed that we're going to have a correction. It may not be as hard everywhere as it will be in some places, but this is going to be an environment that many new realtors have never experienced before. And it's just time to take heed and to listen. What we're talking about here, dealing with life, will also be very helpful. Same techniques, same strategies in dealing with the change in the market, because it's going to knock some people off their happy meal. It really
it can be
is.
scary. It can be scary for sure. But you have to be able to manage the meaning around that fear and change it from the sky's falling to things are going to be crappy, but I can sell some houses.
Yeah.
And then when those disempowering, negative thoughts come in that create anxiety and make you not want to do the things you need to do, you got to stop for a second and get present, become mindful, and just process. And then once it goes by, you can keep moving forward.
Yeah, let's go a little deeper in that, because you talk in your book about the internal narrative and how that needs to change, and self-comparison. You compared yourself to people growing up, and it really was not healthy.
No. I'd say comparison is the thief of self-esteem. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you're always trying to compare yourself to somebody, you're never focusing on the good things that you have. I remember seeing, I was in my mentor's house. We were going to a football game back in '95, and in his shower, he had all of his affirmations. The only one that I remember is, "I'm great where I am, but I can get better." Like, you have to acknowledge that there's some good things going on, but that you can continue to improve upon that. Right? And, Tony Robbins talks about the meaning you give things all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really the meaning that we give something that's going to determine how we feel about it and how we're going to respond.
That's right. That's right. Incantations, affirmations. The top real estate, John Tsai, I love this guy to death up in Vancouver, Canada. He is a beast.
He can shake a room.
Yeah,
with those
we were
affirmations.
in
You remember that?
Vancouver
Yeah.
when he went off on his affirmations, and he had the plaster peeling off the wall.
love it.
It was incredible. Yeah.
I love it.
But, a lot of people look at that and go, well, that's just a bunch of, hocus pocus, smoke and mirrors and all that stuff. But, the reality is that, and this gets back again to the subconscious, if you let the subconscious rule your life, it's going to be horrible, right? And you've got to whip that thing into shape, and it starts with physiology. Tony Robbins talks a lot about how changing your state and so forth works. How does somebody change that internal narrative? You've got to be aware, number one. What's the best way to become aware of a bad internal narrative?
So I did some research as I was creating my coaching program, and I did research. I'm like, can you talk to your subconscious? 11 million responses. Like, you definitely can. Like, your subconscious remembers everything you've tasted, touched, seen, smelled, or heard. It's all, but most people, it's like a sandwich, and the things that are really painful, tucks it way down at the bottom. But I have people take a little 5x7 index card and just ask the question, what is it that's causing my call reluctance?
Okay.
Question mark, or what is it that's making me a perfectionist? And, some people get the answer while we're sitting there in the first class. They can see their brains, and it pops into their head. Some people it takes a little longer, but, the answer's in there.
Yeah.
And then once you find out what, I think Rick Carson talked about taming your gremlin, right? Once you find out, what your gremlin's been saying and doing to you, now you can contend with it and start reframing the things you say to yourself, working on your mindfulness, and really focus on, and you have to be, like I said before, hyper vigilant. Like, every time that emotion comes up that's not going to work for you, you got to stop what you're doing. Yeah, you got to stop what you're doing until you can get to the point where you can just stop it automatically. Even though I don't suffer anxiety on a day-over-day, week-over-week basis, I still have anxious moments, and I either I tighten my back or my left or right foot, or I force air into my lungs. And now, as soon as I feel that, I'm like, what's going on? And I'm thinking about it, and then I'm like, okay. And I can just self-regulate, and it's done. It's gone. Sometimes it lasts 30 seconds. Occasionally I get something that's a little bigger or longer, but for the most part, and that's the only way you're going to get to the next level.
Yeah, have that self-awareness and recognize that, yeah.
I mean, you did it. I mean, your life fell apart at one point, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And you had,
Sure.
you could have curled up into a little ball and checked out, but you didn't.
I did a few times. I didn't do it in public.
Okay,
Not
listen.
Yeah, that was my
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go there. Don't stay there, kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. You need to engage in those. You need to let those feelings
Have those
out.
moments.
Yeah. You
but
gotta
don't stay there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to put yourself in a position where, hey, listen, I'm going to give myself some time. Right? Zig Ziglar talks about it. He said, you want to be mad? Give yourself a half hour to be mad. Once the alarm goes off, go pick yourself back up. So, it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to scream, yell, shout, be mad, be angry. But at the end of the day, once that's over, you got to get to work and keep working on yourself and doing the things you need to do, and nothing's going to change.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just don't make those feelings a part of your everyday life.
Right.
No. It's
Being
okay.
mad, being angry, build a bridge. Well, what does it say? Build a bridge, cry a river, and get over it. Right? Is that what it is? Something
Yep.
like that? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. It's a ridiculously active process.
Yeah, it's not something you just visit once a week.
No, and
It's
yeah,
on a daily
yeah.
basis.
And to your point, I remember when I first started doing this, I was like, I'm trying to think. I had gotten my school loan modified. I was actually at the point where I was not reeling from being in prison anymore and losing everything, and I was trying to get my credit improved. And so one of the guys who works on my credit says, hey, call this company, they'll modify your loan for you. Well, they modified my loan for me, but what they didn't tell me is that they went into my basically United States Education Department account driven by them and lied on some of the information on my behalf. And so I freaked, and I was not self-regulating well. And I remember I was, 10, 15, 20 times a day just trying to get to the point where I just didn't let it overcome me, and it takes some time, but you can do it,
Yeah. Was that when did you reach that low point in your life?
I mean, the lowest point?
Yeah.
You would think President did that, right? But I still had way far to go. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was in that relationship with that person, and I found out after being with her for 4.5 years, after her taking an engagement ring from me, that she was still married the entire time we were together and lied to me about virtually everything. We even went down to visit her parents and stay with her parents while she was still married. I mean, it was horrible. And so on September 7th of that year, I still remember where I was. I was at the University of Texas against the LSU game. I was on ESPN that night, and I remember calling her sister and I said, "Hey, your sister's threatening to kill herself." And she goes, "Oh, that's her. She's always like that." She's been like that her whole life. She goes, I thought you guys weren't together anymore. I go, what? She goes, yeah, she's with her husband. I go, what? I go, they got back together? She's like, he never left. They never left. They've always been married. And that was devastating to me.
Yeah.
And, when you spend your entire life making bad decisions and, those bad decisions compound and get worse and worse and worse, it was early October and I decided I was sitting in the chair. I still remember I'm sitting in the chair in my living room and I'm looking at the French doors on the near the deck of the patio and I can see the light. And all I'm thinking about is how I'm going to kill myself. I'm like, I'm thinking I could take all my medication, but I'm like, I'm 450 pounds. I would need a lot of medication. I don't want to become a vegetable. And then I know people that have guns, but I'm like, I don't want them to feel badly because I could take one of their gums. And then I'm like, well, I could be, I could suicide by cop. Maybe I'll go, and everything I just, for some reason, I had some strange compassion in me for all the people that would be involved in there. And then I was like, God tapped me on my shoulders like, hey, you got 4 kids. Don't forget what it was like when your dad died,
Mm-hmm.
And out of the blue, my uncle called me and said, hey, can you come up and take care of us? Your uncle needs to have knee surgery. And I went up and took care of them and then just made the commitment to start working on myself, But it was bad. And there were days where I would get up and I would work and then I would go to bed. Literally get up, didn't shower. What I'm saying? We didn't have a lot of Zoom calls. It was, before Zoom took off, lots of calls. I didn't shower.
Yeah, I can remember you were having a struggle.
Yeah, we talked about that. You guys knew. I strapped a smile on and had conversations. Nobody knew. Nobody was the wiser.
Yeah.
And there was time in the day I went and took a nap. Until I could finally process it. But it was tough.
Yeah. So what you just described was what I call finding who the rock is at the bottom. Somebody to lean on, God in your case. How has that impacted your life from that time? Do you, you were brought up drugged like I was to church, right? Drugged to church just like you every Sunday, right? So you had a relationship with God before.
Not a good one.
Not a good one.
I was the guy that was at, I was involved in youth group. I was at the church. I even worked at the church when I was 15. But we would go on retreats and I'd be having sex with girls, fooling around with them, not even paying attention. So my dad died when I was 23 and I was like, you know what, I'm done. And we did not have a good relationship for a long time. And then I got married and we went back to church, but then I was basically cheating on my wife and working with my former business partner as, he was lying on mortgages. So, I would have to say that my walk with Christ really didn't truly start until I went to prison. I've always said that if God wants your attention, he's going to get it,
Yeah.
And I still remember, you got to figure it's like holding your breath the entire time. It took me 5 years to find out if I was going to prison or not.
I remember that.
Yeah, long time. So, my weight got up to like 475, 480 pounds. Remember you saw that picture, and so I remember, finally, I was at prison. I could finally exhale. And I remember I walked out of the dorm and then I fell to my knees and I just started bawling because it was like, okay, I can finally exhale,
Yeah.
And then, I went to church regularly in prison and then, worked on that. And so,
So how's your walk with God now?
it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. I volunteer at church, and I really try and read the Bible and understand it and live as Christ-like a life as possible. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'll never even get close to it, but
Well, have you completely accepted his forgiveness?
yeah. And you know what? It's funny. I didn't think I was going to heaven for the longest time. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting in. That's how I felt because I'd done so many horrible things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't believe that way now?
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah.
I may not get a front row seat. You know what I'm saying? But
It's going to be standing. It'll be standing room only.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and there'd probably be some elbow room there too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So no, it's definitely been really good. And I go to church. Some of my best friends are Christians, like you and guys from church. And I try and pray and read the Bible and go to church and really, ask myself because I really never had a moral compass. I'm saying? If I wanted to lie, I would lie. If I wanted to eat, I would eat. If I wanted to have sex with somebody, I would have sex with them. I'd watch pornography. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it,
Yeah.
And now I stop and check in with myself, like, is this something you really should be doing or, even thinking about it. So it's entirely different, especially when you grow up a liar. I started lying when I was like 5 and 6 because I would be punished even if I did anything wrong. I get sat in the corner. So I would try and avoid getting punished. So but anyway, I get punished, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna lie.
Yeah, I remember you wrote in the book that you used to love getting busted at school because it's like you were keeping score on any time you could get in trouble with a teacher.
Oh yeah. It was because my mom was in education. She was one of the top educators in the city where I grew up, and so I think I said in the book, nobody could figure out why Julia Bressler's kid was in the principal's office, every day.
Yeah.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
I'm saying crappy things that already happened, but yeah.
Yeah. So toward the end of the book, you have a chapter called Truth or Consequences.
Mm-hmm.
What's that chapter about?
It's about being radically honest with yourself, radical transparency, radical honesty, and then taking radical responsibility, like looking at things and saying, hey, this is not good. It's not good at all.
Okay.
And being strong enough to say, I need to make the change and it's going to be me. But the other thing is so many people are worried about what other people are going to think of them. They're so worried about being accepted and approved of that they don't do the things they need to do to take care of themselves. And so they'll talk themselves out of it. And, you have to own up, because if you don't, there are consequences, and every time you engage in addictive behavior, it strengthens that addiction, right? To make sense, it makes it even stronger. So, you have to be honest with yourself, as painful as it is, as much as it sucks. If you need to get out of a relationship, if you need to get out of a job, if you need to start doing something, you need to start doing it, or nothing's going to change. And from my experience, things are only going to get worse. And they will. And, you can stuff it down and it'll come back up, and you can stuff it down. Your brain's like, we're still dealing with this. And it's going to keep bringing it back up until you deal with it.
Yeah.
Is it compounding interest? Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, just in reverse.
In reverse?
Compounding.
Entropy.
Yeah.
Interest owed, right?
Yeah, right, literally, yeah.
Or
But
compounding chaos.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Yeah. I mean, you're
Yeah.
like, first I got to lose 25 pounds. Then I got to lose 50 pounds. Then I got to lose 100 pounds. Then I got to lose 150 pounds. Then I got to lose 200 pounds. You know what I'm saying? It just gets worse. Or, coming home from prison and having to literally reestablish relationships with all my children, one of whom would not talk to me for almost a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you make bad decisions, there is a compound effect of what happens when you make bad decisions. The best way I could explain this was watching Scared Straight, and the sheriff was talking to the kids, and he said, listen to me, repeat after me. He says, when you make a bad decision, he said, the consequences are out of your control.
That's true.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So you had some professional help and support to help you through this.
Yeah, I had to.
Is this a DIY thing to get squared away? Or if somebody out there is watching right now who's trying to do this themselves, before they hit that moment of like, how am I going to kill myself? What should they do?
You've been a coach for a long time. We have clients who horrible marriages, terrible with money, cheating, what I'm saying, just because their life is a train wreck. And we probably do as much life coaching and counseling as we do coaching business, That makes sense? And so, you get good at it. And it was funny because I'd be sitting and talking to Kelly, and she'd say something. I just said that to somebody today. I can't believe I just said that to somebody today. And I would get frustrated. I'm like, why? I've been doing this for years, helping people like that. And she's like, you can't be your own coach. You can't be your own therapist. You can't be your own counselor. You can't look at it from the outside. You don't have the thought process that you need. You don't have the belief systems, the words. So you need help. Everybody needs help, And it took me almost 8 or 9 months to actually be like, okay, I got it.
Okay.
But it's, can you lose weight? Sure. I'm saying? There's a lot of things you can do for yourself, but making permanent change requires some sort of external influence where people can give you opinions and thought process and ideas that are different than your own.
Yeah. So let's just kind of, as it relates to real estate, a lot of people get in, not a lot, some get in this business thinking they can do it all themselves.
Yep.
What's the role of coaching, and how important is it, Wally, that people, and when should they seek out the help of a coach, a professional coach?
I think to your point, when should they? I think as soon as you get as far as you think you can get on your own, you go find somebody. Historically, you're going to need to probably be selling around somewhere between 24 and 40 houses, right? That's just about where most people show up. But yeah, if you really want to accelerate your results and get great results for yourself, there's people who can collapse time for you dramatically. You know what I'm saying? And so I think everybody needs a coach in all kinds of areas of their life, not just with business, but on, life and relationships and money and, whatever you can do, because there's folks that are out there that know so much more than you do that you can leverage that, will get you results a lot faster. But, especially in this market, we started coaching in the Great Recession.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we sure did.
Kinder restarted in 2008, and that was pretty much when the top of the Titanic was still, almost ready to go down.
That's right.
But some of the most successful real estate agents on the face of the planet, went through the Great Recession.
Cut their
made
teeth
it,
in it.
they made it through there, and now they know they'll be able to deal with anything. So, but they got coaching because they knew there was no way to handle it. Be humble enough to realize you don't know everything.
And set your ego to side as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the characteristics of somebody who is going to be successful in real estate? Have you figured that out yet?
I get asked this all the time. I would have to say being an implementer is probably the top of the list.
Okay.
Taking action. Right, I used to hear all the time, once you make the decision, the how will take care of itself. Go and implement. You know what I'm saying? You can learn how to write a contract while you're writing a contract. Right?
Thank you.
You can learn how to show a house while you're showing a house. Right? But sitting down and learning all that ahead of time is not going to accelerate your results. In fact, it's going to impede them.
Delay it, yes.
Yeah, even better, more.
Because you overthink about the process.
100%, yeah, right.
You're almost crippling yourself.
Paralysis,
By
what do they call
analysis.
it?
Paralysis
Yeah,
by
yeah.
analysis.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah.
But I think being an implementer and taking action is probably, the number one thing that anybody can do to get results. And then I would say the other thing is being humble to get feedback and learn, right? And not take it personally, right? Just, somebody's giving you feedback not because they're trying to hurt you, because if they tell you something, they could save you hours, days, weeks, months.
Right.
And I would say the last thing is you have to be ambitious.
Ambition.
Right,
Yeah.
you got to be ambitious because you have to continue, especially in the beginning, right? I mean, you're calling, nobody knows you.
Yeah.
Right, you got to get those appointments up and running until finally things pop. And I would say the last thing is probably resilience.
Okay. It's funny, that just leads right into the end of your book here where you talk about people's why.
Oh, yeah.
And so ambition is really driven
By the why.
What is the why, and why is it important?
So, it's great because a lot of people are like, my kids are my why, my car is my why, my house is my, that's a what.
Yeah.
Right, and Simon Sinek does his golden circles, right? He goes, what, why? He goes, what, how, why? Right, and so, his formula for a why is it's usually rooted in some sort of pain. And then you're going to go ahead and contribute X so you can impact Y. The letter Y, meaning you have to be able to impact the outcome over something for it to truly be a why, right? So in your instance, never wanting to have to live like you did when, you got divorced and your life kind of went sideways, that's probably a driving force for you, that you're never going to do that again. Like having the fear that your kids are going to have to take care of you is, you're like, I'm never going to let that happen. You know what I'm saying? And so what you're doing is you're building an organization, you're contributing X so that you can impact Y, so that, if they need to put you on life support till the year, 2152, they can. You know what I'm saying? But the whole point is your why needs to be something you can impact the outcome over, and you need to be able to contribute something towards making that happen. So your what may be your children, or your why may be, hey, listen, I want to make sure that my kids have, a financial legacy that will take care of them long after I'm gone, so they're secure and they never have to worry about money. Or I had horrible relationships with women, so I'm going to make sure that my why is to only engage in good relationships with other women, but also give my children guidance and talk to them and speak up with them and teach them how to have good relationships with people so they can be happy, right? So, yeah, and I think people get all twisted about their why because they keep looking at the what.
The stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not, and listen, here's the thing. Like, we all have egos. You want a car and it feeds your ego, great. You know what I'm saying? Just own it. Listen, we had a terrible car when I was a kid, and I hated pulling up to, someplace. I never want to be in a crappy car again. So it meets that need, and, it feeds your ego a little bit, and you feel good, you feel confident. Great. You know what I'm saying? It's no different than getting a nose job or, anything else, right? You got to do it so you feel good. And so whatever it is, it's got to be, you're trying to impact the outcome over it. It's usually tied to something. It's usually a thing, but it's tied to your ability to impose it. Impact, and why, and to answer your question, why? Because if you don't have a strong enough why, you're not going to do the hard things you need to do to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like, it's about to get hard
Yeah.
in real estate.
Yeah.
We have a settling in the market, and we've got seasonal, downturns too, right? Nothing
and we got a Fed that's on fire right now.
Yeah, they're trying to squash inflation.
Trying to
Yeah.
shut the economy down.
Yeah, and the thing is, houses always sell But what's going to get you out of bed to prospect and make sure you call people and learn what to say, when to say it, how to say it, so you go 3 or 4 notes deep, so you can be the one that talks to those people.
Well, that gets back to those internal narratives and how this show has been great. This book will be great to help you understand what you need to do to re-engineer and rewire your brain. So we got the tail wagging the dog most of the time with our heads.
Fair enough.
It really is.
Yeah, you got to learn how to pick up the pieces.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you got to throw the pieces away, right? The ones you don't need to have in your head.
That's the one thing I always loved about my grandfather. He could take something apart and put it back together and have it run, and there would still be parts left over.
Parts left over.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
My
That's
poppy
like me with furniture, right?
Yeah,
I don't ever
yeah.
read the instructions, and I always put it together.
The lawnmower wasn't working one time, and he went and fixed it, and there were like a couple of bolts and some washers and some other stuff left, and he pulls it and it goes. I'm like, how did you do that? He did that all the time. So
That's fascinating. Yeah, that really is. Recently you started a very successful company called Phone Sales Secrets.
yes, sir.
What motivated you to do that?
You were coaching folks back then, and you get on the phone with them, and they hadn't progressed like an inch. And you're like, you give them all the things, and they keep coming back. And I'm like, I would say to people, look, I can't keep taking your money. Right? I'm not going to take your money because you're not progressing. No, I need your help. I need your direction. Did you prospect this week? No, I didn't. You have to prospect. You've got to get on the phone and talk to people. And so I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. In fact, I had call reluctance for 10 years myself.
You had call reluctance.
10 years, yeah, from the age of 18 until I got my real estate license. And I, through personal development and other things, I overcame it. And I sold 72 houses my first 14 months in the business, all from prospecting, I'm saying, for the most part. So, but, I just, I had a client named Brian O'Neill. He's actually an icon agent out of Greenville, South Carolina. And, he's a tattooed agent. He's got all these like tribal tattoos on his arms. He's got no hair. He's, stocky. You look at him, he's a man's man. And he's a firefighter. You know what I'm saying? And so, I'm like, dude, like, it's time to call. We got a prospect. We did the 90 days. We get everything up and running. I'm like, hey, it's time to prospect. He's like, I don't call. I go, what do you mean you don't call? He goes, I don't call. I said, it's like a 4-ounce piece of plastic. What do you mean you don't call? And he said, I can't pick up the phone. I'm like, wait a second. You go into burning buildings, you pull people out, and then you go back in again and pull them out, and then you save people on the sidewalk, and you can't call a phone? And he said, no. And I said, okay, well. Then I started going back into my counseling, my therapy, what I learned, and the stuff that I've learned over the years, and I just started working with him. And about 4 weeks later, he calls me and says, hey, I just got a $500,000 listing. I go, great. Where'd you get that? He says, I was calling FSBOs. I go, what? Yeah.
Mr. Call Reluctance.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And I'm like, holy cow, that's amazing. And so he ended up picking like another $750,000 house or something like that. But at the end of the day, I've always believed that if you're brave enough to leave a job to go become a real estate agent, that you deserve to make any amount of money you need to make or want to make.
Yeah.
But you're not going to do it if you can't pick up the phone at some point in your career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, let's get over it. And then it turned into more than that, because it's not about the phone. It's about, how you feel about how people feel about you, and embarrassment and rejection and approval and all that other stuff. And so it's just been fantastic what's happened with people's lives.
Yeah. What is your one best piece of advice for agents to do to get through the next 24 months?
Don't ever give up. Doesn't matter how old you are, what you've done, what you've not done. Go find somebody who can help you, and just don't give up.
Don't give up.
Yeah, there's so many free resources. I got people.
Yeah, coaching programs online.
Period.
Ricky Caruth's got one.
Yeah.
There's lots of them.
You can go to YouTube and you can Google, expired calls, and you can listen to expired calls until the cows come home.
Yeah.
Right.
It's information overload nowadays.
But education without action is just entertainment, right?
I like that. Nice.
So, yeah. I mean, there are some agents watching the show right now that think they're working when they're fiddle farting around on social media and so forth.
I don't know who said this, but they said hell is when the man you are meets the man you were supposed to become. Right, when you're out there, and that happened to me a few years ago when things were kind of crazy. I met somebody and we talked. We had a similar background, and he was just then. I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Oddly enough, I was so mired in my addictions, I just kind of brushed it off. But don't give up. Go find somebody, learn what you need to do, and just don't give up.
Yeah,
because it's never too late.
What about the people you hang around? Is that important?
100%. Right.
What do you tell your kids about that?
Choose your friends wisely. I said, guilt by association is called guilt by association for a reason. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you don't spend time around people that, don't build you up, and who who you can't grow from and who can't grow from you. You know what I'm saying? People who don't treat you well.
And value's got to be there as well for both people, both parties.
100%, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, just, and we have conversations with them about people too. Like, hey, I saw you hanging out with so-and-so. What's going on with that? And we're like, you can't hang out with that person anymore.
Yeah.
It's always out of the best interest of the parent, right?
What did I used to tell you about hanging out with?
How many years did it take you to realize that? What are you, 28?
27.
Yeah, so-
But, yeah, you can either fly with the eagles or soar with the eagles or hang with the squirrels.
Hang
Yeah.
with the turkeys.
Yeah. Don't be hanging out with the turkeys at night. If you wanna
But
fly with
that's
the
such a
eagles
true
in the morning.
statement. And I mean, I definitely, frame my life around that mantra. You are the 5 people you hang around. You will become the 5 people you hang out with the most. And, the 5 people you hang out with is a direct reflection about who you are as well.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You have a final word for
Holy cow.
I know.
It's over.
I know. Do you have a final
Holy
word
cow.
for our audience of aspiring realtors who are just craving hope right now for this uncertain future we got going ahead of us? I know you said that don't give up. Is there anything else? What about you mentioned implementation. What about time management? Is that an important skill to develop?
Time is your most valuable commodity, right? I mean, you can't make more time. You can make more of everything else, just not time. I guess I would say, if I were to tell somebody right now, like, if you're going to do it, you got to be all in. You can't, there's no part-time. There's no, I'm just going to call my friends and family. I'm just going to do open houses. You got to be all in.
Yeah.
And I've learned that, once you commit to something and you do what you're supposed to do, that whatever's supposed to happen happens. So things conspire. Like I think you've probably seen this before too. You start coaching somebody who wasn't doing well, and then 90 days later, they're like, man, all these deals are coming my way. They're not falling out of the sky. I'm like, they're not falling out of the sky. You're just doing what you're supposed to be doing. You want to go hit, you want to get hit, go play in traffic, right? So you just
Right, no shit.
You want to get hit, go play in traffic. But the whole point is you got to be all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, you
have
got to
to.
play full out. You know what I'm saying? And if
Yeah.
you don't, there's no reason to stay. Houses are going to sell, right? Even when things sucked before, 4.1 million houses sold, or resale houses sold in 2008, right? We lost 400,000 real estate agents, so everything evens out.
Yeah. It's like across the board on our team. It's amazing how much better the leads get when they get their scripts and dialogues together.
These are great leads. Oh, that was an awesome lead.
Yeah, yeah. They sucked before, but
Yeah.
now they're good leads.
How'd that happen?
Yeah, amazing.
The script.
Yeah. Well, Wally, it's always a pleasure
Yeah, thank you.
to have you on the show here, and
Appreciate
I'm so
you guys
proud of you.
immensely.
This,
Thank you.
I dogged you about this book for a while.
You were
and
on me
I'm,
like a
I'm
rat on a
glad.
Cheeto.
I'm glad you finally penned it, and it's one. If you don't have it in your library, you need to give it. That's a great looking cover, by the way.
Thank you.
I think you did such a great job with
Thank you.
that, and
Appreciate that.
so excited for you.
Thank
and
you.
again, you're headed to California for awards here coming up soon, and
Yep.
and
Pretty excited about that too.
yeah. If somebody wanted to get an autographed copy of your book, what would they need to do?
If they,
You going to do an event somewhere, maybe? Or,
I'm thinking about doing one in California in December, but if you want an autographed copy, just send a copy. I'll get you my address. You can send it to me, and just send me an extra $8 so I can send it to you, and I'll sign it and send it to you.
yeah. Okay. All right. That sounds great, man. Yeah. Or we may have a pop-up Wally.
We might have to.
Wally book sale or something at one of our events or something. Like.
We'll
Yeah.
drop the link in the comments.
Yeah, we'll put it in
that
the
way
comments.
You can find on
Thank you.
Amazon.
And if anybody wanted to reach out to you, because you're still coaching some of the top agents in the country, and
Yeah.
I know your schedule's super busy, but you always seem to find time to talk to people who are really in need. What's the best way to reach out to you?
You can email me, Wally at phonesalessecrets.com. A lot of people hit me up on Facebook and Messenger too, so
Okay, super.
I always respond.
Yeah,
Very accessible guy.
yeah, he is for sure.
Thank you.
Well, brother, we love you. We
Love you
thank you
too.
for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Very proud of you, man.
Thank you.
And it's great to see you at the top again.
Yes.
After that roller coaster.
Agreed.
And I know that you're gonna be affecting and impacting a lot of people in the future going forward.
That's
So,
my hope. Yeah.
yeah, and Wally helps our team, the Cliff Freeman Group. Obviously, you're involved on a daily basis with our team and helping them sharpen their, iron sharpens iron, sharpen their skills, and we're so grateful for the
Thank you.
love that you pour into them as well.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be part of your organization for sure.
All right, folks. Well, I think Trellis, you out there? We have to say hi to our man here. Is he?
Y'all got a lot of good information out today.
I'll tell you, we unpacked it today, didn't we?
A lot of good inspiration too.
Yes, sir. You got any good inspiration for Monday night? You got a line yet?
Uh-oh.
I don't.
No?
I'm scared to even say, to be honest.
Big rivalry.
I'm honestly scared to say.
Yeah.
Skins and Cowboys.
Who would? It's the Giants and the
Giants.
Cowboys.
Right, okay.
Who would have thought they whip up on Cincinnati or even have a?
I did call that
chance?
one.
You did call it.
We in a co-worker.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
We taking one game at a time.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a sports legend in the broadcasting business with us next week. Brady Tinker is going to be on the
Nice.
show.
Oh, nice.
Yep, Brady has decided to transition into real estate with our group, and we are super excited to welcome him. He's
friend
gonna
of
he's gonna
ours.
get out of the gate like a frickin' hurricane. So I'm just totally pumped, and it's going to be great to have somebody that really knows what they're doing behind this desk up here.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get him to interview me or something. I don't know.
When you
or
brought
else.
up hurricane, I immediately thought of Puerto Rico.
Yeah, Puerto Rico.
So we'll keep our
those
friends and
we have a lot of friends down there, and I understand
folks
they
that
may
live
be getting
there.
their power back on, is what
Yeah.
Kevin
Yeah.
Johnson
Water,
said.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's
pray for,
tough down there right now.
yeah, pray for them.
Thanks again, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you,
okay.
Wally.
All right, folks. Well, catch us next week, and Brady Tinker will be sitting with us, and we'll see you guys at the top or from the top here on Cliff's Notes. All right, folks. Tune in to Cliff's Notes every Thursday at 1 o'clock Central for the tips, tricks, and tactics to explode your business. I guarantee it.